The Last Mughal by William Dalrymple. In Delhi, one sign of the growing unrest showed itself only 8 months after the death of Mirza Fakhru. Early in the morning, on 18th March 1857, a flyer, a small dirty piece of paper with a naked sword and shield depicted, according to Theo, was placed on the back wall of the Jama Masjid in Delhi. Purporting to be a proclamation from the Shah of Iran, it announced that a British expeditionary force had just suffered a massive defeat in Persia and that the Persian army had crossed the Afghan border and was now marching from Herat to come and liberate Delhi from Christian rule. God willing, the time is not far when I shall appear in the land of Hind and shall delight and make happy both the rulers and subjects of that place. Just as the English have deprived them of food and comfort, to the same measure I shall endeavour to increase their prosperity, and let it be known that I have no objections to anyone's religion. By the 6th March, 900 Irani soldiers, along with senior officers, will have entered India, and there are already 500 soldiers present in Delhi, disguised in dress and appearance. In the meantime, the Muslims must refrain from helping or supporting the Christians, and it is necessary that so far as possible they should remain loyal and faithful towards their fellow Muslims. The notice was posted for 3 hours, and a huge crowd gathered to read it, until Theo Metcalfe, who happened to be passing, rode up and ripped it down. The following day, however, the contents of the notice were reprinted in full in the court newspaper, the Siraj al-Akhbar, creating a ripple of excitement across the city, although the paper also questioned, rightly, both the veracity of the proclamation and the truth of the claim of a Persian victory over the British. Already, there had been brief reports in the Urdu newspapers of mysterious chapatis, or fried puris as the Delhi papers reported, being passed by night watchmen from village to village across Hindustan. One report in the Noor-e-Maghrebi in February had mentioned their passing between some villages near Bulandshahr. By early March, they had reached Mathura on the main road to Agra. But they do not seem to have got any closer to Delhi than this. And even there, no one seems to have understood what its significance was. As far as the Delhi papers were concerned, it was certainly a matter given far less space than the reports of a fatwa being posted in Madras, calling on all believers to rise against the infidels. He who fell in such a war would be called a martyr. And the excitable rumors that either the Russians or the Persian army, or possibly both, were on the march and about to appear in Delhi. Most prominent of all were reports, which began to appear from late March onwards, of unrest in the army in Bengal, especially at Berhampur and Barakpur. According to Theo, by the spring of 1857, the people of Delhi were perfectly aware of the want of fidelity in the Sepoy army, and the subject was frequently discussed. This growing unrest in Delhi could be traced back at least to the previous winter when, on 7th February 1856, the British had unilaterally annexed the prosperous kingdom of Awadh, or Oudh as the British called it, to the east of Delhi. The excuse for this was that its Nawab, the poet, dancer and epicure Wajid Ali Shah, was excessively debauched. The people of Delhi were used to the British bullying and plundering the Nawabs as they had done for nearly a century now, but the outright annexation of the kingdom had nevertheless caused far more alarm across northern India than the British seemed to have realized, or indeed anticipated, and increased awareness of the precariousness of the Mughals' own position. More importantly, it greatly unsettled the sepoys of the company's army, most of whom were drawn from upper caste Hindu families in rural Oudh, and who now found themselves compelled to reduce their own country to vassalage. The venal and occasionally brutal way the annexation had been carried out caused particular distress. Even British officials were aware that what had happened was not one of the more honourable episodes in the history of the Honourable Company. One company's servant, Robert Byrd, had gone so far as to produce an anonymously published book entitled Dacoity in Excelsis, or the Spoliation of Oudh by the East India Company. In it, Byrd, an insider in all that had happened, exposed the degree to which a large fictional dossier, eventually published as the Parliamentary Oudh Blue Book, had been assembled by interested parties within the company to push for Oudh's annexation. The dossier had depicted a province given up to crime, havoc, and anarchy by the misrule of a government at once imbecile and corrupt. This image, wrote Byrd, was little more than a fiction of official penmanship, an oriental romance, and was refuted by one simple and obstinate fact, that the people of Oudh clearly preferred the slandered regime of the Nawab to the grasping but rose-coloured government of the company. Byrd pointed out, in particular, that those who had experience of both governments, to the number of some 50,000 employed as sepoys by the company, felt and resented the difference in the two regimes especially strongly. Not only does the annexation itself appear to have been accompanied by acts of violence and spoliation wholly indefensible, but the foundation of all property seems to have been unsettled to an extent unheard of under any civilized rule. We hear on all sides of landowners dispossessed, in short of the company dealing with the province as if it were not merely entitled to the revenues of it, but as if all the property within it had become the spoil of its bow and spear, as if in fact it was an uninhabited island newly discovered with which the discoverers had a right to do what they willed. Already many smaller kingdoms had been quietly and profitably annexed by the company. The policy of Governor-General Dalhousie, 1812-60, known as the Doctrine of Lapse, had banned the age-old Hindu practice of adopted sons succeeding to their father's throne, and led to the unpopular and deeply resented annexations of Satara in 1848, Jhansi in 1853, and Nagpur in 1854. But Oudh was an acquisition on a far different scale from anything yet attempted, and was practiced on a faithful and unresisting ally without even the nominal justification of the absence of a recognized heir, and with only the fictitious charges and fallacious bearings of the Oudh Blue Book as an excuse.